As Dr. Tuttle had mentioned, this is the presentation that I shared with the Finance and Facility Committee last week. As we started talking more about the sinking fund, because of different ballot language that occurred in 2017, sinking fund does now allow for technology and transportation in there. And I am aware last month when there was the presentation given about technology, over the course of 10 years, one of the big numbers that stuck out there was about $36+ million. And so having conversations with people out there, they said, okay, so tell us a little bit more. If I'm looking at $36 million, I just need to know what that means overall. So one of the first questions that I just do like to ask, and we're not going to play the game of what you know technology to be is, but a lot of times when people think about technology in schools, they really think that it's a Chromebook, that it's a laptop, that it's just an interactive flat panel. I certainly will tell you, based off of the phone calls that we get some of the times with our tech staff, pretty much anything that plugs in can be considered technology. I like to joke that some of the times someone might think that a microwave is even technology, because I guess it technically is, but it's not something that my team supports overall. But technology in schools is so much more than laptops. It's a system that enhances every aspect of education. Pretty much now in 2024, an organization can only run when technology is working properly. So it's your infrastructure. So we're talking about your networks, our high-speed internet that we have going through our buildings. It's the classroom tools, true. So the interactive flat panels that we have out there, mobile devices, our learning management system. But it also really provides our safety and security systems out there. With the passing of the bond, and I'll get into this a little bit further, we were able to implement many more, hundreds more security cameras in our buildings, and door access control, badges that we use on a daily basis. So that truly is part of technology. It's the efficiency. In order for my technology department to run as smoothly as possible, we need strong infrastructure and networks to know what is going on at all times and to receive proper alerts if something does go down. And that also includes support. So when we're talking about not just purchasing a device, we have to make sure that we're providing proper refreshes to our staff and that technology support. So I did state down here, school technology powers teaching, learning, and operations overall. So although within my department I do handle the budget, I work with numbers quite a bit, I'm also a former English teacher, and I'm always going to be an English teacher at heart. So I want to share a little bit of a story with you. I want to go backwards a little bit. So when I first came to the Grosse Pointe Public School System in 2017, I'm a former English teacher, as I shared. I'm a former building administrator, and when I got into this role, it was really exciting because I was becoming the Director of Instructional Technology for an extremely premier school district. It's just a great place to be. Really excited to get here. But I will tell you, the moment I got here, some of the things that I saw. We had aging desktops in all of our classrooms and in our labs. We had 20-year-old phones. That picture over on the bottom left that you'll see is actually from the first season of The Office, which came out in 2005, and we had those same phones that were up there. I'm telling you, my staff was purchasing zip ties left and right. Dr. Bishop is laughing because he's been in the buildings before it that way. We had zip ties that we had to purchase to make sure that these phones could stand up properly on desks. We had what Smart calls legacy smart boards out there. They were purchased in 2008. Very, very kind of, I believe it was our PTOs and the Grosse Pointe Foundation placed them in every single classroom, which was just a marvel. It was a great new piece of technology in 2008. But by 2017, they were definitely becoming very long in the tooth. Students and my kids, I remember them telling me the story about how they would just always be squinting their eyes in the classroom. If you walked through buildings, classroom lights were turned off constantly because the kids couldn't really see exactly what was going on in the board. The projectors themselves, the light bulbs were dimming. We had 10 to 14-year-old copy machines. We had very weak Wi-Fi with limited bandwidth, so even when we took on the project of Bring Your Own Device, if you'll recall in 2019, we had to start with the 6th grade and no other grades out there because we needed to make sure that we at least had some type of bandwidth to be able to work that out. And we did have some security cameras in our secondary buildings, none in our elementary schools. Now, to be clear, I think we did have one or two maybe at an intercom door, but we didn't have any security cameras anywhere. And so it's a great place to be. I was extremely excited to be there in 2017. However, this was the state of our technology at that time. Want to share what some of those results of that outdated technology looked like. Literal and metaphorical Band-Aid fixes needed to occur. As I shared previously, my team certainly was purchasing zip ties all the time to make sure that the phones could stand appropriately. The dark classrooms and squinted eyes, we had constant technology repairs from our team. I mean, our team could, it had many tech issues that they had to work on because the devices that we were upkeeping for longer than needed definitely needed constant repair. With that, we also needed additional staff that was required. It was really important to be able to make sure that we were servicing our teachers and students, and we needed more people for that. We also relied on hope as a strategy, and as I know from many leadership books, you never want to rely on hope as a strategy. And we were less secure. If I'm talking just about the door access controls, the security cameras out there, we certainly were less secure in that area. So coming on board, especially with the passing of the bond, one of the big tasks that I had working with principals and teachers was, what do we feel modern day technology truly should look like? And I will tell you, all of these bullet points weren't just my own ideas, obviously. I mean, these are the ways that we certainly are seeing technology changing the way that we do things. So one of the first things that we focused on was mobility. So all of our classrooms had teacher desktops. We switched to laptops. What that allows for is more accessibility to be able to move around the room, to be able to meet and partner with other colleagues and plan lessons that way. Our labs moved to Chromebook carts, mainly at the elementary and middle school that way. Again, what that assisted with was that on-time learning when our digital content was getting bigger and bigger. Also allows for that idea of accessibility. If you're mobile, you can be a bit more accessible that way. So that certainly was helpful with the implementation of Schoology, or learning management system, and then also moving to Google Cloud storage. So no longer did we have to really keep all of our servers internal when it came to staff saving their material. It could now be in the cloud, and so because they have laptops, they can access that from anywhere. Creativity was extremely important, collaboration was important, and then obviously safety and security was key when we were taking a look at this. So I'm happy and proud to say, as the Director of Learning Technology, we've come a long way since 2017. With the passing of the bond, we were able to provide those laptops for staff. Chromebooks for testing and classroom digital content was extremely important, and especially because of the fact that more statewide testing is now becoming more digital. It's more important than ever that you do have to have devices in there. We do have new interactive flat panels, so no longer students don't have to squint their eyes as much. You're seeing the lights on in classrooms, and that's where really good learning is going to occur that way. We do have a robust wired and wireless network. We were able to redo that, and that really just has completely changed the game in accessibility. I mean, if you even look at this table right now, I'm sure we probably have maybe 25 connected devices just at this table altogether. So it's really important to continue to maintain those wireless networks to fit the need. As you are also aware, we do have a fiber ring that's going around the points, and what's helpful for that is we do have constant, strong bandwidth going to every single building. I believe we have about 20 gigabits going to every single one of our buildings out there, so we're ready. Door access controls and security cameras, we were able to add much more. I believe, I don't want to say the number, I think we have about 800 security cameras throughout the district right now, which is much more than what we previously had. Door access controls are huge too. So not just because this is easier for me to unlock doors, but it's helpful as staff. I am able to know who is coming and going from our building, and if anything needs to be turned off, we're able to do that in just a second. We can also assist with locking our doors in a much more secure way remotely. PAs and clocks, that's also a really important part of technology, and that comes into safety and security. So a lot of times people might not think that clocks really are a piece of technology, but they are. All of the clocks that we've now brought into our classrooms, we want to make sure that they're all wound at the same time. So every single student, when they're looking at that analog clock in the classroom, it's matching their next door neighbor and it's matching the classroom downstairs too. Those all have to hit a server to make sure that they're wound in the most appropriate way. And our PAs, I think it had been decades upon decades since those were replaced. We also were able to implement technology for a large area AV, what you're seeing here, right? The addition of newer projectors, which looked fabulous today when Dr. Tuttle was giving her presentation. And then phones. Thankfully, we were able to upgrade those phones. We no longer had to zip tie those together. But it's important, although this happened in 2020, it's now 2024. Going into 2025 much quicker than I'd even think so. So what do we need to do to make sure that we are building a future-ready district? There's ongoing work. Technology needs constant updating. As soon as something is installed, the clock is ticking. It's time sensitive. So as a premier district, it's important for us that our students and staff have the technology and the security that they need today. So now I'm going to get into the numbers, but I have a couple of assumptions that I just want to share with the board. Right now, this technology plan that I'm sharing with you over the course of 10 years really is to maintain. We're not adding many new things that are out there. And as I'm sure you're all aware, the further I take a look at time, if I'm looking 5-7 years down the road, that crystal ball gets a bit foggier. I'm not entirely sure what new technologies are going to be coming out there. So right now, what we're looking at is technology to maintain what we installed in 2020. There are a couple of slight differences that I'll point out, but just wanted to share that with you. Where this came from was working with Plant Moran Technology 2 years ago. We put together a 10-year budget of what this could look like. Obviously, some adjustments did need to be made because that was 2 years ago, and there were a couple of projects that we did remove from that, but there were also some price increases that occurred. So for example, and I know Dr. Tuttle showed the different cost of things over the course of time. These wireless access points that you see throughout our rooms, that's what allows for Wi-Fi to occur for us to connect. They have increased, they've skyrocketed in cost out there. So we did make some adjustments. I want to be clear, what is not included in here are one-to-one devices for students, okay? So we're talking about continuing bring your own device as we currently have it. You are going to see some areas where I'm talking about the purchasing of Chromebooks, but again, that really is the fact that we have digital tests that we are required to take by the state. The College Board has also moved all of their AP testing over to digital, as well as the SAT and the PSAT. And those always have to be on school-managed devices. They can't be on student-run Chromebooks. Again, you also won't see a lot of future technologies that are out there. So here's the big numbers, and I'm going to break these down, but we did put them into 5 different buckets. So again, you see this number and you say $36 million. As a reminder, this is over the course of 10 years. So one of the first areas that we'll talk about is infrastructure. So a lot of that's the behind-the-scenes stuff, the stuff that you don't see, but it's a must in order for it to work. We also have instructional technology, so that is the stuff that you see that's happening in the classroom. We also have operational technology. So I do have them in a couple different categories. I've got that as 5-year useful life and then 10-year useful life. So some of these things might require 2 refreshes over the course of 10 years. And then finally, there's indirect costs. And I'll break that down, what that looks like, but some people call them soft costs. Those would be some design fees, cost escalation that goes up, and certainly some contingencies that occur. So in this first area, we have infrastructure. When we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about a couple of different areas. So cabling, what does that look like? And this would be for, and I apologize for the acronym over there, Dr. Tuttle. It's IFP is an interactive flat panel for audio-visual cabling. That would be cabling for wireless, and then obviously any construction or renovation that would occur with that. Also, it would be important to talk about a couple of fiber updates that truly have almost become a need, because I constantly hear this request. When we did update the fiber, or when we did provide the fiber ring to the district, we did not bore fiber out to the athletic fields. And I'm hearing that more and more, that there really is an importance to be able to have that, whether that's going to be over at the concession stands because nobody's bringing cash anymore, right? Or even able to bring it all over into the press box. We know that grandparents want to see their kids play football, so to be able to film that without issue, that's going to be a really important thing to have in there. We also have had conversations before about some potential data center moves. This doesn't mean it's a must, but it's certainly in conversation. Right now, our technology data center is in the basement of Parcells. As we see this water pouring outside right now, and those of us that live in Grosse Pointe, we certainly are aware that we can get some basement issues when rain does occur. So to be able to move the technology department out of the Parcells basement might be helpful at that time. Instructional technology. This would be the cost of servers, teacher devices. So I'd be looking at 2-year refresh. And why am I looking at 2-year refresh on this? Because again, these devices that our teachers are currently using were purchased in 2020. So one of the first things that I would be looking to purchase would be teacher devices and those student devices that are out there. And then obviously through that 10-year window, I would have to refresh those again. Lab devices, we do have some very highly specific labs at both of our high schools. Now, I will tell you, I am amazed by the work that our students do, specifically I'll say a digital photography class, right? They have some of the most up-to-date technology out there that kids are using I can't think of the word, I apologize, but they're using in the big leagues, right? So in order to be able to utilize that, you have to have some of the best computers out there. So I know that you do take a look at that as a big number, but that would be 2 refreshes. We also are looking at classroom AV, so that would be the purchasing of interactive flat panels, document cameras. Large area AV would be included as well. And then we do have 2 areas, one specifically for STEM. We know that there's always been conversations at the elementary level about how to provide more maker spaces for students out there. Over the course of 10 years, if you break this down by building, it really isn't a very large cost. And then finally, we do have an area for curriculum. We're seeing more digital content happening more than ever before. We're not purchasing nearly as many textbooks, and frankly, it's not because we don't see it necessary to have textbooks. This is just where the game is going right now. I mean, you're seeing McGraw-Hill, Houghton Mifflin. This is really where they're looking at this. Did I skip over one? Under operational technology, we'd be looking to update our network. So again, did this in 2020, so it's important to do it all over again. Some of the times this feels like painting the Mackinac Bridge, right? So as soon as you finish painting, you got to start all over. Firewalls are extremely important. Firewalls are really what helps protect us from any bad actors out there. It also has those web content filters for our students. So we make sure that our students are receiving all of the educational technology and able to go to the important educational websites that they can go to, and also being able to block a lot of those filters out there. Uninterruptible power supplies, we call those UPSs. And basically what that does is if there's a power outage, you want to make sure that your stuff can still continue to run appropriately so that nothing shorts. Wireless access points, as I stated before, it's important to be able to update those throughout the district. We also have an area for the Brownell MPR, so this is where we're sitting right now. We're talking about updating any of the sound that's happening here. These projectors, although they no longer require bulbs, so there's not a ton of maintenance, they are not cheap. in order to be able to replace those. The conference rooms, IFPs, where a lot of meetings happen, whether it's families that are having an IEP meeting or a 504 meeting, having a counseling appointment, or teachers are working with each other, it would be important to update those. We also have 2 cycles for non-instructional staff, so that would be our office staff, if you're thinking about that, or morning side. Our plant staff to be able to refresh those. And then obviously our copier refresh is going to be important. I do have 2 cycles for that because again, we purchased our last ones in 2021. That time will occur to do a refresh, and we just want to make sure that we'll be able to be in a good spot to make sure that we're providing the right materials to our students. And then finally, over the course of 10 years, we do have some more operational technology. The phone system will need to be upgraded at some point. Video surveillance is going to constantly have to be upgraded, so replacing of the current cameras that we have in there, possibly the addition of some other areas that might have been missed, but also the purchasing of those servers too. When you've got cameras that are running 24/7 every single day all across the district, you need some hefty servers in order to be able to run those. Door access control is going to be important, and so not only just the replacing of current, but also looking at the expanding of the exterior side of our buildings. And then finally, PAs and clocks. Indirect cost, this is the final slide in this spot. I know that this is an area that it's never fun to have to say, oh, I got to put out some money for this, but it really is important in order for us to get this done successfully, in order to have great projects that are managed. So contingency comes from this. So if you're looking at the cost of this out there, you certainly want to be able to create a contingency because of the unknowns. Once you start drilling, you don't know what's behind that wall, and so you want to make sure that you are accounted for with that. Design fees are always going to be important too. Mr. Madison does this through his position and my position as well. In order to be able to make sure that something is done right, you do need to have designers that are out there, and you also need to have people that are going to be able to manage a lot of those projects. When I'm handling the day-to-day, some of the times it's difficult when you've got 4 different vendors working on one project. One vendor accidentally doesn't show up on that Thursday, and then all of a sudden that takes the project back. In order to be able to have one person to go to, that's always helpful. And then again, we do have cost escalation. Because this is over the course of 10 years, we certainly know that the cost is going to increase. So that's really important for us to be able to look at and prepare appropriately over time. So I just want to close with the key takeaways, and I do appreciate your time with this. Technology in our school district, when we are being the premier district that we are, there is a transformational impact. The technology advances, they benefit everyone, whether it's our students that are utilizing technology to deepen their learning, to be able to access things, for teachers to be able to inform their instruction by doing a quick quiz with their kids and they can quickly adjust where things are, or even our business department just making sure that they have the proper technology in order to run things appropriately. It does make a transformational impact. There's also a strong value in upkeep. Investments matter only if they're maintained. So it was great that we were able to put in all of this technology in 2020. We got to keep it up. We also want to focus on the functionality. Again, I want to be clear here. We don't want to just purchase technology just because it's shiny and new. I heard one time that technology isn't really efficient until it's boring, and I do truly believe that to be the case. I remember when the iPad first came out, you just wanted to show all your friends. Look at this thing. It's like a magic window. It isn't until you're fully utilizing it in the proper ways that it's going to be the most efficient. So that really is what we are taking a look at here. We're not looking at anything shiny and new. We just want to make sure that we have effective tools. Also, this is essential. It's not optional. So I know we did talk about sinking fund. We can talk about general fund that's out there. The technology that I'm sharing is technology that does need to be updated. So it's really important for us to take a look at how we need to be able to purchase that. And we also just want to take this proactive approach. It's extremely important. I don't want to go back to 2017 for a variety of reasons, but I certainly don't want to go back to 2017 where the kids had to squint their eyes to see what's going on in the classroom or having those phones fall apart. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions, and I certainly appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Stanley, for that excellent presentation. We talked about this at great length during the facilities meeting last week, and your presentation was excellent there too. But I think what I'm taking away from what you said is that everything that you are striving for is critical. It's not optional. We need this in order to stay a top tier, in order to stay a premier district, and that it's not really optional that we don't pass this, right?
I mean, I guess what I could gather from that is there are very, very few wouldn't it be nice to haves. The majority of this truly is we have to have it. We've come to expect this, and this really is how the world is working right now.
Yeah, and the other thing that I thought was important you pointed out is that we need this for our security of our students, for the well-being of our students. It's not just, like, I'm glad you pointed out this isn't just to give every student a one-to-one device. It's so that our security is top-notch and you're able to control who gets in and out of the buildings, and that it's a secure place and safe place for our students to be.
That is 100% correct.
Thank you.
I just want to say that's a fantastic presentation, and you always make things so clear, and I just appreciate you and all the hard work you put into this.
Thank you.
I have several questions, unfortunately. So the Chromebooks that you said, I know we're not doing one-to-one devices. It's a bring your own device district, and you said that we purchase Chromebooks for the testing, which makes sense, but we don't just keep those Chromebooks locked away until we're ready to have them for a test. Is that the same pool of Chromebooks that is lent out when kids forget or they need it for something else?
We have had a couple of different pools that way. So I will tell you, the majority of the Chromebooks that we have been able to provide to our students was given to us through the Emergency Connectivity Fund, okay? So those were provided to the district, which was extremely helpful. That's out there. Several of our buildings don't just utilize them locked away, right? An English teacher might utilize those within the classroom, but I guess the best thing that I can say is whether, unfortunately, maybe some are locked away, maybe some are being used, it still is a 100% need that you have to have those.
Right, okay. And I know that you apply for a lot of grants, but do you think there are any grants coming up that can cover some of these?
I will always look.
Okay. And then finally, can we use the sinking fund to cover the indirect costs, or is that going to have to come out of the general fund, and you were just letting us know?
I believe as long as...
I'm going to jump in.
Yeah,
on that
thank
one.
you, Dr. Tuttle.
So obviously, there was a wonderful presentation, very comprehensive.
Thank you.
So to your question, though, we would never purchase anything without running it through the attorneys to make sure that it meets the requirements of sinking fund. We think everything that we have presented today does, in fact, do that. But before we were to purchase anything, we would never put the district at liability of doing something illegal. So every purchase of technology would run through the attorneys to make sure that it is permissible uses.
Sure. I'm just remembering your very vivid metaphor of shaking the building and indirect
Yes.
costs would come out, I guess. So,
Yeah, and that's a good point, but I think that metaphor was prior to technology being
okay.
a permissible use. So that was kind of in the old days when technology wasn't a permissible use, then technology got added to the sinking funds, now transportation. So perhaps that's not a great metaphor when you're talking about technology, but.
Okay, thanks for
yes.
clearing that up.
Good question, though.
That's all. Thank you.
Well, thank you again. Excellent presentation. And I, as far as the security part of it and the updating part of it, I think when people are not in a, I do this and I know what happens when technology gets old, and it seems to happen overnight, and all of a sudden you have, a teacher's laptop that's not working and not connecting, or a smart board. I ended up with a new smart board last year, and it was standing in front of the old smart board, that was mounted on another board. And it's really, it's hard to quantify how much that impacts instruction on a daily basis. So, you have students running to another person's classroom because their technology is working, and so it impacts instruction when you're behind the curve and you're not updating proactively.
Right.
Copy machines, the bane of every teacher's existence, and probably secretary. And then the badge access too, just that, when my kids were little here, the door at Richard was open, every
Right.
day in South and Bright. You walked in and out, anybody, and you went to the office, hopefully. And we didn't have the secure vestibules, so people sometimes wandered around the buildings till we figured out who they were. And, and we've gone from that to a buzzer system to now the swipe badge. So every new employee, when we hire in, has to have all their badge access granted by the technology department. So there's kind of all these layers of things that we might not see, but are certainly, we appreciate them, and we know it's a big job, and this is a critical part of the security. And just out of my own curiosity, I know we talked about digital. I know we have some crazy advanced science equipment, I think, that we talk about as part of the technology in our high schools, digital photography, I know you mentioned. And we used to have some piano labs, too, that they were doing composition, and like they were doing you could take a class and get computer credit, your
Yep.
half credit of computer.
Digital piano courses. Right.
So is that part of your department, too, all of those?
So we have maintained those. I will say, I think there's a small class running at South right now, and they're still currently utilizing the devices that they had in years previous.
Okay, yeah, I was out of curiosity,
Sure.
but that's another,
Yep.
thing. And MacBooks, I know, are used in a lot of art applications and things
Right.
too, right? And
Yep.
music applications. So thank you. Appreciate all your work on this. It's
Certainly.
a big job.
Thank you, Dr. Stanley. I know, I was going to say, you could go ahead first.
You can go first.
I just want to say at the Finance Committee, I know they are very appreciative of this presentation, and I think that this is absolutely essential, and I think that this really helps set us up for success with the sinking fund, with clarifying the technology piece.
Thanks.
Yeah, so you've done it twice now. Hopefully they got a nice close-up of you in a videotape, so you don't have to do it a third time and we can use the video, but thank you again for doing it. And someone asked earlier about, are we going to have a balance? We're going to have a balanced budget this year. That's great. We're going to have a balanced budget this year, but if we don't, I won't advocate for anything, but if these dollars don't come out of a sinking fund, they would come out of a general fund, and that's $3 million a year over the next 10 years. A little bit more than that, but so, again, if this technology is critical and we're going to have to purchase it anyways, and that's not even to talk about the building repairs and other, and transportation that we can potentially move to the sinking fund as well. If it doesn't come from a sinking fund, it comes from the general fund, so that's something everyone needs to consider. You can dislike the numbers, it's the reality of what school buildings or school technology costs these days. And I just think, thank you again for the presentation. I think it kind of puts the point out there that these are the minimal things we need to do to keep pace with the kind of things that we've done and brought to the district since you've been here, so thank you.
Treasurer Collins, you had a great suggestion during that facilities meeting, and that was to identify what specific projects would happen next year. We have
Yeah.
not had an opportunity to do
Yeah,
that
I
yet, so
think
we're
it-
still working on that. I just didn't want you to think that we had forgotten that. We've just been getting school started.
And my point then was, I think, ideally by January of each year, and I know we're a ways away from January, but by, our sinking fund passes, by January of each year, I think we need to develop a solid plan for that next summer, as we've done with the current sinking fund. I'm not saying that's something we haven't done. And potentially a 3 to 5 year, maybe a 3-year list that are the potential things that get solidified over the course of that next year and becomes your 1-year plan, and then you add on to the end of the 3-year plan. It's just that planning that needs to happen, especially if we're going to get this 10 years, we need to be looking forward. And I know that speaking with the Plant Moran team, they've told us that, sometimes you move projects around based on, commodity pricing that's better this year than it's going to be next year. So maybe, those wireless routers go on fire sale in 2 years,
Right.
and we replace wireless routers, maybe a year ahead of schedule. So those kind of things
Yep.
you need to understand. Thank you.
Luckily, Mr. Madison and I like each other, so we'll be kindly arm wrestling over whose projects take precedent.
He doesn't have a mic to agree or disagree with.
That's
that,
right.
so.